Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon.
On the record at 1 o'clock.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the August 15th, 1 p.m. docket for the Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. My name is Becky Witt, and I'm the Executive Director to the BMZA. We have 4 members of the board here today. From left to right, Leland Shelton, Victor Clark, James Fields, who's the chair, and Bill Cunningham. Please silence your cell phones. If you need to have a private conversation with someone, please do so out in the lobby. When it's your turn to speak, please come up here. You can either come to the desk here or to the podium and identify yourself and spell your name for the court reporter who's across from me here and be sworn in to testify. We have Charm TV is here to record this meeting today, so there's a microphone that looks like this on the podium and on the desk. You're going to have to press the button if it's red to turn it green, and then you can speak when it's green. And I'm going to be probably yelling at the board members to do that for most of today, since we're not used to doing it. Let's see here.
We're going to take offense to that, but
Yeah.
don't worry about it. We'll handle it.
Okay, if you haven't already signed in on the sign-in sheet and you plan to speak today on any matter, please sign in now. Everyone who wants to speak should sign in, including attorneys, applicants, opposition, support, everybody. The board's vote today on your case does not make the decision final. We have to issue the decision in writing in a document called the resolution, which is a process that takes several weeks. It needs to be drafted and then reviewed and approved by the board. So we will send them to you via email once they're ready. If you're unhappy with the outcome of your case, you have the right to request reconsideration of the board's decision within 10 business days of the issuance of the resolution. And you also have the right to appeal the board's decision to the circuit court within 30 calendar days of the issuance of the resolution. Oh, and board members, like I said, we have postponement requests for 2023-114, and then we have opposition for 2023-127, as well as 2023-134 signed in today so far.
Okay.
I think that's it.
Okay, good afternoon, folks. As Ms. Witt intimated, we will endeavor to deliberate on your case at the conclusion of your presentation unless we advise you that we'd like more information or there's something else that we need. And really, it would be typically in the interest of the applicant to bring a full record. But if we don't say we need anything, then we'll just proceed to deliberation at the conclusion of your presentation. We would ask that you not take any action towards your project, even if approved, until you receive the written decision of the board, and certainly don't do any work within Baltimore City without pulling the proper permits. So I'll call the case for which a postponement has been requested. Case number 2023-114, 1200 through 1204 West Baltimore Street. Ms. Hecker's office ably represented.
I'm Ms. Hecker, Part 2.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Drew Tilden of Rosenberg Martin Greenberg. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. We found out today from Ms. Witt that there was a letter of opposition in the file, and so we would like to postpone so that we can engage further with the community.
Well, we appreciate that effort and, welcome it. Any objection to the postponement request?
No.
All right, well, Ms. Tilden, thank you.
All right,
Great
thank you so
postponement.
much.
All right, see you again soon.
Yeah.
And we'll go from the top of the docket, case number 2023-086, 322 North Stricker. Praful Patel. Okay, come on up, ma'am. This is a request to use the premises as a multifamily dwelling, 3 dwelling units requiring a minimum lot area variance. Is that correct? Okay. Let's get the applicant sworn. I'm sorry, your name?
My name is Oluwafunsayo Komului.
All right, can you tell this gentleman and spell it for him, please?
Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give in the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Can you state and then spell your full name for the record?
Yeah.
Yes, it's Oluwafunsayo, Oluwafoyinsayo.
Oh,
Last name,
wait a minute.
that's good.
Well, your full name.
Okay, last name is Kumolui.
And before I ask for reports from staff and, well, you'll explain this, that this is really a confirmation of non-conforming density. So I'll hear from staff and planning.
Also, you can just go ahead and leave it green, so you don't have to turn it off and on. Just as long as it's green, you can speak. Okay, so it was sent up to us as a variance. However, looking at the file in a little bit more detail, it looks like a confirmation of non-conforming density from what we see. So the zoning card, the request is to use as multifamily dwelling, 3 dwelling units. The zoning card shows 3 dwelling unit use in 1957, 1960, and 1965. It seems like the property has likely been vacant for a long time. There's no windows, the roof looks like it's collapsed. And so the electronic record, which you can see in your packet, says that it's a multifamily dwelling, but then shows the number of dwelling units as 1, which doesn't make any sense and is probably a mistake in the transfer of the information from the old system into our newer system, which is from like 2005, so it's not really new. Under the code, previously, when a property became vacant, it kind of reverted to single-family dwelling status, so a lot of vacant properties in our system say that they're single-family dwellings, but really they do have a history of multifamily use. So our policy here at BMZA, as long as I've been working here anyway, has been to confirm the non-conforming density of whatever the last legal use of the property is, as long as they're not asking for an increase in density, an increase in the dwelling units. So like I said, the last legal use of this property, according to our records, is for 3 dwelling units, and that's what the appellant is requesting.
Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department notes that this particular property, because of the historic layout of this area, is not able to meet a number of the standards in the zoning code, including the rear yard setback regulation and off-street parking regulation. These are as-built conditions of the property. The property is also in a National Register Historic District. The department has no objection to this application. Should the board determine that the application is approvable, the department recommends that approval of this application be subject to the condition that use of the property complies with terms and conditions of the Baltimore City Code, Article 23, which is the sanitation code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Ma'am, are you agreeable to compliance with Article 23 sanitation code?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And does your information comport with our finding that the property historically been used as 3 dwelling units?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you have any intention to utilize the property as more than 3 dwelling units?
No, sir.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? No. All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
On the record presented to us, that based on the records available to the BMZA, we show a prior use of 3 dwelling units in this property from 1957, 1960, and 1965. The applicant has indicated no intention to utilize the property for more than 3 dwelling units. And so I think we can confirm, based on the record before us, we're just going to confirm the non-conforming density here for 3 dwelling units. And I'm a yes as to this application.
I mean, yes.
I'm also a yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Sure. Next step.
Calling case number 2023-109, 4453 Bel Air Road. Annette Tucker is the applicant. Are you Ms. Tucker?
I am.
Welcome.
Thank
This is
you.
a request to use a portion of the premises as a banquet hall requiring conditional use approval. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Let's get the witness sworn.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give and the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you just state your name for the record?
Annette Tucker. I'll spell it ANNETTETUCKER.
All right, I'll hear from staff and planning.
Okay, so this is a conditional use request for a banquet hall. I'll just note here that sometimes we come across these situations where under the code, it requires that the fire marshal give a fire rated capacity in order for us to calculate how much parking is required. for a particular use, and that's what is true for banquet halls. However, the fire marshal gives capacity toward the very end of the process, and we're at the beginning of the process. So we don't really know if they're going to need a parking variance for this request, and none has been requested, but I just thought I would flag that, that if they do need a parking variance, they may need to come back. But right now, the request is for a conditional use for a banquet hall.
Basically echoing the comments of BMZA staff, the planning department noted that this particular property does have a record of use as a tavern previously. There may be a fire rated capacity rating for that use, which may or may not be relevant to the board's consideration, but we would suggest that the applicant inform the board, if at all possible, of what the last fire rated capacity of the property was. That said, the property appears to be adequate for the use proposed, and the department has no further comment on the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. French.
Thank you.
Ms. Tucker, is there any light you can shed on the fire rated capacity of the premises?
I actually don't know, but the building's parking previous to me, it was a car dealership. So it was adequate parking for the dealership. The space is smaller than the actual parking lot, if that makes sense.
So you're
Yeah.
saying there's a lot of parking
It
available
is.
on site?
Yeah,
Okay, so you may not need a parking variance then, but
okay.
you might, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So you'll track that information with whatever the fire department says?
Yeah.
And then if that requires a parking variance, then we'll see you again.
okay.
So with regard to your banquet hall operation, do you have an idea of the days and hours of operation of the banquet hall?
I do. So the space will be available Tuesday through Saturday, 12 to 7 and then 7 to 2, depending on what the event is. And that's about it
Okay,
for the hours and days.
all right. Based on your knowledge of what it is you propose to do, how you intend to operate that use, are you aware of any circumstance or condition that would make this use detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or welfare?
I don't.
All right. All right, any questions for the applicant?
No. No question.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add today, ma'am?
No, that's it.
Okay. All right, we'll proceed to deliberate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Again, not a lot of information to go on, but critically, there's no information in the record that would suggest that this use would be improper or otherwise endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. We will hear from the applicant if it becomes necessary to come back for a parking variance. But on the face of it, the requested use does not appear to be precluded by any law, including any urban renewal plan. Doesn't appear to be contrary to the public interest, and otherwise appears to be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the code. So I'm a yes for this requested conditional use.
Also a yes.
All right, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Case number 2023-125, 3001 through 3023 Wilkins Avenue. Brandon Wood Boarding LLC. Come on up, folks. Hi, how are you? Your name?
Elizabeth Brett.
Okay, sir.
Jonathan Brett.
Okay, welcome. This is a request to construct an 8 feet in height fence requiring front and street corner side yard variances, correct?
Correct.
All right. Let's get the party sworn.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the testimony you give that the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
We do.
Thank you. Ma'am, can you state your statement and spell your first?
Sure. Elizabeth Brett, B-R-E-T-T.
What was the first name?
Elizabeth, traditional, E-L-I-Z-A-B-E-T-H.
And sir.
Jonathan Brett, spelled Johnathonbrettt.
Right, I'll hear from staff and planning.
Okay, so there are a few variances being requested here. As the board probably knows, you're allowed to build a 6-foot fence in rear and interior side yards, and 3.5-foot fence generally on front and corner side yards. So they're requesting an 8-foot fence, which requires these variances. From each lot line, they need a variance. So from the front lot line, corner side, interior side, and rear lot lines. And you can see how much of a variance they need for each of those lot lines in your notes there. And yeah, I just, in your notes, pointed you to the planning department report, which talks a little bit about the possible uniqueness of this site. So I'll leave that to Martin to go over in more detail.
Thank you.
Planning Department has reviewed this application, notes this property is in the industrially zoned portion of the Moral Park community. It was last used as a motor vehicle dealership with outdoor vehicle display, which was a non-conforming use. Therefore, basically what the applicant is requesting will extinguish non-conforming use of the property. The fence that is proposed will not extend to the actual corner of the intersection of Wilkins and Wilmington Avenues due to the fact that there is a building on that corner, and therefore the fence will not interfere with sight lines for vehicles approaching that intersection from either street. The applicant has also agreed that the fence will be placed at least 20 feet distant from the stream at the rear of the property in order to protect the waterway from possible conflict with the use of the property. And the department therefore recommends approval of this application. We do believe it is a rather unique property in terms of its size, its shape, and the particular location in relation to a stream that must be kept clear of, quite frankly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Quite an entree, because typically the difficulty is demonstrating uniqueness, and we do take a lot of stock in the report of the planning department, because obviously they've reviewed this quite extensively. Do you have any information that would challenge the report of planning as to uniqueness of the property?
No, sir. We also, but to add to that, there
Yes.
has been an existing 8-foot-high chain link fence with barbed and razor wire in existence where we plan to put the fence for at least the last 40 years, according to Google Images. We have already removed the razor wire and barbed wire as it is a hazard to the community, and we simply want to ensure a more aesthetically pleasing and secure area by removing the chain link fence that is deteriorating. So instead of just replacing it, we are seeking approval to do it correctly.
Okay. One second here. Any questions for the applicants?
No.
Anything else you'd like to add, folks? Okay. All right, thank you so much. In adherence to the variance standards, question 1, are the conditions on which the application is based unique to the property? Again, accepting the report of the planning department and also the additional information from the applicants, it would appear that the property is unique, given the topographical issues, noting that the property is close to Maiden's Choice Run and secondary stream that flows into Maiden's Choice Run at the location, and noting in the record that to protect the environmental quality of the waterway, it's important to limit the commercial use of the property to the portion furthest from the waterways. Let's see. That's an application. I'm sorry, could you stand up and come back up for a moment? Just some other basic information, which may be obvious, but not necessarily in my notes. What are you planning to do here at the location?
It will be a kennel, a dog boarding, grooming, and daycare facility. So the 8-foot fence is also required in order for the safety of the animals.
Okay. And
which is permitted under the I-1 zoning usage.
Gotcha. All right. And would that also, so it'd be overnight boarding and
Yes, sir.
things like that? And there's an outdoor space for the
Yes, sir.
animals to run around and,
The entire property is 2.5 acres. The initial build will be using about a half an acre, but we will be working closely with an architect and the Environmental Commission in order to clean up the oil spillage on part of the property and to bring it back so that it is more useful and healthful space for our area.
okay. And just a question, in your experience and research, would it be far more practical and more safe to have a fence of the height that you're seeking as opposed to just a 6-foot fence?
Yes, sir. The number of dogs that have the capability of, in order to provide the most secure position, you're looking for a fencing of 8 to 10 feet on the exterior. There are, because we are going to be doing actually like a vinyl fence, it will not be a chain link fence. There will be nothing for the dogs to grip onto it, so there will be no way for people to get into the property, and there will be no way for dogs to get out of the property, which is why we're requesting this variance, because we could keep the existing chain link fence as long as we didn't change it. Our preference is to spend the $100,000 to create a more aesthetically pleasing, large front footage for Wilmington and for Wilkins, and then also provide a more secure area for the dogs.
Got it.
We will see you again for many other processes over the next 2 years, but this is the first step.
Great, great. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you for that additional information. And now that I know what exactly you're going to use it for, it makes more sense to run through the conditions. As I mentioned, the property clearly appears to be unique based on the information previously identified. To make a reasonable use of the property, particularly for the kennel use and the boarding use, and given the animals and that will be on the property utilizing it, we don't want to defeat the purpose by having a fence that cannot contain them and keep them in. Let's see, practical difficulty, certainly difficult to comply with the strict letter of the code, which would prevent the owner from using the property for permitted purpose, so I think that's been established. The unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty is caused by the code, not by what the applicant is intending to do, and they've not otherwise created it by any intentional action or inaction. The purpose of the variance does not appear to be based exclusively on a desire to increase the value or income potential of the property, and the variance, based on the record, would not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of any other property in the immediate vicinity, and it looks like there would be a substantial improvement in the benefit to the community. And so, and the variance otherwise appears to be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the code, any urban renewal plan, which I'm not aware of, city comprehensive master plan, and again, the variance would not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. It looks like the applicant's taken measures to be sure that no such harm comes to the community. So I'm a yes for all those.
Yes.
I'm also a yes.
Yes.
Thanks so much. Okay. Case number 2023-127, 705 Reservoir Street. Yvonne Pulliam, come on up. And I understand that this is also a case for which we have some opposition. Anyone who's here in opposition to this application, could you also at least stand? We're going to need to hear from you. Ooh, okay. Going to need to hear from you from the mic. So you can remain standing because you're going to have to be sworn. Why don't you, at least two people can come up and have a seat at the table where there's a microphone. I don't know if you've identified any lead spokesperson for the group. Oh, come on up. Okay, and you are Mrs. Pulliam?
I am Yvonne Pulliam.
Okay, you, sir?
Derek Pulliam, husband.
All right. And this is, again, the request to use the basement and first floor of the premises as a daycare center, child daycare center requiring conditional use approval, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you're all here in opposition, so we're going to get all the parties and witnesses sworn, and then we'll proceed with reports, okay? Go ahead, sir.
Raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give and the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Sir, can I have you, you were Derek?
Derek,
Can you spell that?
D-E-R-E-K. Last name Pulliam, P-U-L-L-I-A-M.
Ma'am, at the table, can you just spell your full name?
My full name is Katiana, K-A-T-I-A-N-A. My last name is Noel, N-O-E-L.
Thank you, and sir, you.
Bryce, B-R-I-C-E, Biggins, B as in boy, I-G-G-I, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam.
I'll hear from staff and planning.
Okay, so the request submitted is to use the basement and the first floor as a daycare center child for up to 25 children. We often hear these up to 12 children, so 25 it's more. And you have I believe you have support and opposition in your file. There are a handful of letters of support, a handful of letters of opposition. And I'm sure that everyone can testify further to that, but that's what we have, conditional use for daycare center.
Okay, Mr. French?
Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that this property is last authorized for use as a multifamily dwelling, and the application states the applicant is already providing home daycare on the premises. The department generally will support increases in capacity of daycare, but recognizes that in this situation, a lower capacity may be appropriate due to the limited outdoor play area possible on a row house lot, and then similarly, because this is a row house area with attached residential structures, 24-hour operations would likely be detrimental to adjoining residential properties. The department is informally recommending limiting hours of operation to 6:30 in the morning to 8 p.m. unless the applicant has secured approval in advance from adjoining residents for more extended hours of operation. The other issue in the eyes of the department is drop-off and pickup of children on site. If 25 people were to arrive at the same time with vehicles on Reservoir Street to pick up or drop off children, there would be problems with traffic flow on Reservoir Street. The limited frontage of the property being only 16 feet 3 inches wide, makes it impossible to create a passenger loading zone in front of this property alone. The department is recommending approval of the application, subject to the condition that the daycare center is operated in a manner that minimizes disruption of traffic on Reservoir Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. So can you tell me how many, you're operating a daycare presently, correct?
No, I
No.
am not.
Okay,
I'm
all
not
right. So that's the first point of business.
Oh, no, I'm not.
Tell us about your project and what you would like to do.
So I would like to open a child care center on my basement and the first floor of my home.
Take your time. It's all right. Basement and the first floor, and up to 25 children.
So up to, not that I'm looking to have 25 children. I've not yet started. This is the first step in many steps. I've only just begun. I'm working with the Maryland State Department of Education to
Yes,
get
ma'am.
this underway, if at all. I think where I went wrong is that I did not talk a lot to my community members,
Okay.
right? So I think that's where the ball was dropped. I didn't speak enough to them about this initiative, and I take full blame for that, right? However, to speak about concerns that are had, one would be sanitation. So what would I do with all the trash that would come from it? We're planning to take trash off-site to Sisson Avenue, which is the dump around the corner from the property every day. I'm looking to operate Monday through Friday and closing at 6 o'clock. And if I have to open at 8, then I'll open at 8. I was thinking to open at 7, if at all possible. Those would be the hours. In terms of the other question was pickup and drop-off times. That was another concern. When you think about like how schools let out at one specific time, maybe a school might let out at 2:30 or at 3 o'clock, and all the parents come at that specific time, right? And so usually there's the carpool line, and all the parents are there. Well, typically for a daycare, parents come at the convenience of the parent. So the drop-off and pickup times are sporadic throughout the day. So it may not be, it's unlikely, let me say that. It's unlikely that I would have a carpool line because one parent may get off at a different time than another. But at 6 o'clock, there should be no parents because I would be done for the day.
And what if all parents decided they were going to, because you offer your service till 6 p.m.?
Sure.
We'd like to sign up and give us as much leeway as parents to get there. So there is the possibility that everybody would want to come at the same time.
So let's just say that happened, right? And all parents did come at the same time. I'm also looking to enforce quick drop-offs and quick pickups so that parents are quickly coming in and quickly getting their children and moving on. This isn't like social hour. They're coming in and they're picking up their children and they're moving on with whatever it is that they have. The other thought is that there may even be some families that would use the service from neighboring communities, and so they would not have a car. They would be walking. So then that would alleviate the issue there.
Have you operated a daycare previously?
No, I've worked in them.
You've worked in them, okay. This is here for a conditional use, and typically in conditional uses, paramount importance is how it impacts the community, because that's
For
really
sure.
the decision we are asked to sort of undertake. What's the impact?
Sure.
And it's for that reason that we do encourage, we can't dictate because folks can decide to do what they want to do, but we do encourage you to speak with the community to see if you can reach an accommodation.
Okay.
And we like them to do that before coming before us, because kind of to have it all hashed out in front of us is, you could save a lot of time and energy if, there's some kind of reasonable accommodation that can be met.
Okay.
I haven't heard from the opposition, but I'm wondering, would the opposition be willing to entertain a discussion with the applicant about what it is they intend to do? And I make that statement with the understanding that if your intention and your response is no daycare whatsoever, then we need to know that and we can move forward. But I'd like to hear from you just briefly. It's kind of taking it out of turn, but if you would have some tolerance for that.
So by way of background, the opposition from the community is substantial. We have a opposition petition here, copies if needed.
Has that been produced to the office?
I believe we tried to, but we were told because of the time frame that we would need to provide it in person and hard copy, which we have here.
Okay.
This is supported by 46 signatures. This was
Okay, and has that petition been provided to the applicant?
No.
no.
So they don't know what?
The first time that this was discussed with any of us that we're aware of was, let's see here, that would have been Sunday. The petitioner's husband came to my house and discussed this with me. That's the first substantive discussion other than the notice of this hearing that was posted onto the second floor exterior of their dwelling.
Okay. And not having seen that petition or, the contents of it, is it the community, okay, it's substantial, but is it substantial to the point where the community is adamant it does not want a daycare of any size, shape, or form in the community?
Yes.
That's your response? Okay. Well, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna ask, because apparently there was not sort of a sit-down discussion with the community.
Correct.
If you'd like the opportunity to do that and take some time to do that, because once we decide, it's gonna be
Right.
final decision.
Correct.
And this is your first time doing this or this venture or
Correct.
trying to engage in that. And again, you probably didn't know, that's one of the things that's fairly critical to conditional uses, that we take into account what the impact on the community and the reasons for that. I recognize you all are here, in opposition and ready to present it. You can hand that up, however, to, so we understand what the issues are.
You
Yeah,
can
one
give
to
it to
them.
Thank you.
And if you wouldn't mind giving me one, so we can,
This is a minimal digest. This was thrown together with some haste.
okay,
Because again, there was no prior discussion, notice. I myself am an attorney, and I did not have time to thoroughly research this issue and prepare
okay,
something,
Okay.
nor, and quite frankly, I would have suggested in this instance that we seek counsel. Not
Okay.
me, because I'm
so
a corporate boy.
would it be helpful that you all digest what it is to get that time to, I know you threw it together in haste and you've gotten, some things together and some names. Would it be helpful for you all to take a step back to really understand? Hold on.
I just want to add also that we have a few neighborhood committees.
I'm
and
sorry, you have what?
We have a few neighborhood committees, so when
Yes.
these, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Go ahead, I can.
We have a few neighborhood committees, and we usually rely on them to bring this to our attention, and we also rely on anybody that wants to do anything with the neighborhood to go to the committee, so we
Sure.
can be properly informed. So there is a check and balance, and then also just to give the history of the neighborhood, Reservoir Hill, there's a lot of things that have happened under our radar, and we're just trying to make sure that that communication is open.
Yes,
So-
we've had some experience with Reservoir Hill and that, so I get it.
So
Understand.
we, as a team, like as a neighborhood, we are trying to gather together. We're not trying to block anybody's blessing, but if we never met you, we wouldn't have known. Because of the things, the history of the neighborhood.
Sure.
When we hear something like this.
Right.
Now we're taking action.
Yeah, you marshal the resources and you come and you show up when you can and get what you can get together. I understand. I'm going to offer to you an opportunity to postpone this matter.
Okay.
So that you can, for lack of a better term, get your ducks in a row. More importantly, to have the discussion with the community about what it is you'd like to do, where that need is, how, if at all, an accommodation could possibly be reached, maybe diminish the size of what it is you're seeking.
For sure.
All those things. First of all, board, would you be amenable to granting a postponement to allow the applicant to consider those issues?
Yeah.
But again, it's up to you. And again, deference to the opposition who did, on short notice, come together and have a response prepared. For the board's perspective, we prefer communities to speak and to talk and to have an opportunity to iron out differences if they can. And so I'll give you that opportunity.
Thank you.
If you'd like to take advantage of it. And then you let the BMZA office know when you're ready to come back. if it's your desire to go forward with your application, because we don't know how that would shake out.
Correct.
And I would encourage you to get in touch with the folks who are here represented to identify those communities, their representation, and who it is you could speak to and when,
Okay.
to have that discussion. So if you'd like to take advantage of the opportunity, the board would be amenable to granting that postponement.
I like the opportunity.
Okay. And so you can reach out to Ms. Witt's office and to get back on the docket. And in the meantime, we welcome you to have any and all discussions that you can have with the communities at issue. Okay?
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Board, you in agreement with that?
Yeah, fine.
Yes. Okay. Very well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good job.
Okay. Calling case number 2023-134, northeast side of West Cross Street, northwest side of Sterrett Street. Dave Akiniyi. I'm sorry, I didn't do it justice.
That was great. I loved it.
Well, tell me your version.
It's Akini.
Akiniyi. That's kind of what I said. And this is a request to construct a new 4-story multifamily building with 7 dwelling units requiring rear yard and off-street parking variances. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do we have opposition here to that, or is it just in writing? Come on up, sir. And ma'am. So anybody who would intend to testify, you come up. Ma'am, are you here in opposition?
Yeah, but you can.
Okay, well, if you want to be heard, here's your opportunity. Otherwise, you won't be on the record, and we can't consider what you have to say. All right, so we will get the parties, witnesses sworn.
Raise your right hand. You swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give and the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Sir, I have your name and spelling here. Can you let me know what your full name and spelling on there?
Ian Zemski, IANDIENSKI.
Sorry. All right, I'll hear from staff and planning.
All right, so there are actually 4 variances being requested here as far as I and the staff can figure out. So, and I believe, and the appellant can correct me if I'm mistaken. I think we didn't quite have a site plan that was clear enough to understand, but we believe that what he's asking for is to build a multifamily dwelling that goes out to the lot lines, covers the entire lot. So maximum lot coverage for this zoning district is 80%. 100% is proposed, so that would be a 20% variance. So lot coverage, interior side yard, 10 feet is required, 0 feet is proposed, so it'd be a 10-foot variance there. Minimum rear yard, 25 feet is required, 0 is proposed, so it'd be a 25-foot variance there. And then off-street parking, because he's proposing 7 dwelling units, 7 spaces are required, 4 are proposed, so it would be a 3-space variance. Those are the variances that I have for this property based on the assumption that it is a total lot coverage proposal. I did not. You can, yeah.
Planning Department has reviewed this application, notes that this property is located in the Washington Village Urban Renewal Plan area. That plan does contain some design guidelines, which the applicant would be encouraged to consult in preparing final plans. In addition, because of that, this property must undergo Urban Design and Architectural Advisory Panel review for its design. The property is kind of unusual. It appears never to have been improved for over 125 years. But the applicant is requesting 7 dwelling units. This property is zoned R8 currently. For 7 dwelling units, 4,875 square feet of lot area is required. This lot only encloses approximately 3,746 square feet, and therefore would need a variance of the lot coverage, the lot area requirement. This would amount to about 23%. The department notes that 5 dwelling units would be permitted without a variance of the lot area requirement. The department was unable to determine from the plans that were included with the application whether the building was going to be built to the lot lines or at what distance from the lot lines, and therefore is not able to make a cogent comment on issues about setbacks, required yards, and lot coverage. On the issue of parking, yes, as proposed, there would be only 4 parking spaces provided on site, and 7 units would require 7 parking spaces. This proposed development is also not being reviewed by the Site Plan Review Committee, and there may be issues with this particular property. The department is not aware whether the applicant has fully studied the engineering that might be involved with this property. And that has to do with an issue about the use of Sterrett Street, which appears to be built over a major storm sewer in Baltimore City from a long time back. The department is recommending a deferral of a complete hearing of this application to allow the applicant time to develop a site plan and architectural plans that would be approvable according to the terms of the Washington Village Urban Renewal Plan and the design manual, and also to confer in greater depth with the community about how development of this street corner property could make it a better contribution to the Pigtown community in which it's located. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. Sir, let me just ask you before you get started. There seems to be a bit more that needs to be done so that, one, planning can weigh in, as Mr. French mentioned, particularly with regard to the variances that you're seeking. Also, I guess, community input. Do you think, why is it that you think you need to move forward now before doing those things that planning suggests?
All right, so the things for the urban renewal plan, I'll touch on that first.
Okay.
And by the way, I have the site plan itself, if anyone wanted to take a look at that.
Okay, is this the site plan that's been submitted to
Yes,
the
sir.
planning department?
Yes, sir. So I could walk through it if there's any questions on that as well, if you all might want a copy as well.
It's in your file.
Okay,
All right, so you can see there that we actually do extend to the lot lines of the property there. The sewer that he's referring to, that it runs over, that actually goes down to Sterrett Street at the end of it, and I actually just finished a property on that street, 1123 Sterrett Street, right down the street from this property. So the engineering plan and all of that, we have that planned out and thought through. So we know exactly how we would build this proposed property. I think the urban renewal qualm that they may have is, for instance, the red brick. They like it to be red brick, which that's a problem that I've communicated with them that we could definitely make it red brick. That's no issue. And I think it's also some of the aesthetic facing of the property itself, which that is a thing that we can easily update and make sure that they're on board with as well. So I don't think that would be a major concern. I wanted to make sure I was in good shape from the fundamental aspects of the build itself to make sure that we were in good shape with that. I did send out letters to the neighbors in the area. I did speak at the Pigtown community meeting. I also have a couple letters of support here that I would ask if I'm allowed to read by chance.
sure, you could submit them or read them, but so are you satisfied that the site plan you've submitted is what you're going to move forward with regard to the planning department, or are you?
So I guess I would have to better understand what their questions are on that. I think the question was the structural design, was it?
Well, site plan review involves a number of factors. That would include issues like, you know, and it's very nitty-gritty detail in many cases. Things like where the dumpsters and things of that ilk are going to be placed, how the trash and garbage removal is going to be handled and where. The issue along Sterrett Street would be the length of a curb cut or driveway access for 4 side-by-side parking spaces, which would create at least a 40-foot long expanse along there where it would not be necessarily safe for pedestrians to pass. So there are a lot of issues there. There are also the technical things about, yes, where does the sewage hookup occur? Where's the water hookup? If there's going to be gas, you know, where's the gas hookup, et cetera. Those are all things that the Site Plan Review Committee looks at, and possible impact upon traffic in the area based upon parking and turning radius and things like that. So those are things normally that are handled by an engineering firm rather than an architectural firm. Usually a development team includes one of each, an architect and an engineer. So if you have an engineering firm engaged or you are
Yes,
the
sir.
engineering firm,
Yes, sir.
then you should be in contact with the site plan review committee to arrange for formal site plan review by the city agencies that are members of that committee.
Okay, so on the points that you made, yes, we have engineers that have worked to put together these plans. As far as the hookup of the trash, the first point you made, we are planning to partner with the church that's next door to us. So this will be private trash. The city doesn't have to worry about anything about this. The other concern you had on the parking. So there is no street that actually comes to the back of this building. So this was part of why we requested a variance, because of the unique design of the area itself. So for us to.
Hold on for a second. The things that Mr. French just mentioned, have you heard any of this before?
Have I heard?
The issues that were raised by planning here. Were you aware of those issues?
In terms of the trash, well, I was aware that they were potential things that I was ready to speak on. Usually when I've created site plans in the past, we didn't show like the trash bins and things along those lines. Those would technically come with the MEP drawings that we would do as far as those specific details.
Okay. Yeah, it's, comment was made that the devil is in the details, and it's helpful. If it's helpful to planning, it's helpful to us, because we want to get planning's input and understanding of why planning is recommending a deferral of a full determination here, because those things aren't sort of minuscule or innocuous. They have an impact on what it is we have to decide. So, and you're speaking, and some of that is more technical to us, where it's more beneficial for planning to hear and understand, and therefore can issue a report that is consistent with what the discussions have been with you.
Yes, sir. And part of that is also to get a permit to build the building in the first place, I would have to still go through the city, and all of those like specific details of gas hookups, water hookups, they do a very difficult look at those. So just to get past them, that's the hardest part. So it's not as if those are things that are not going to be reviewed regardless.
Okay. Go ahead.
So the second concern was the parking. I was mentioning, so if you could see the unique way that where the building is, the streets that it's on, there is no way to go, there's no street that connects to the back of the building. It's just an open field of grass. So there's nothing where you could actually drive to the back in order to create parking. So what we did was we manufactured it in a way that you could still get 4 parking spots on the bottom, do the curb cut to a limited extent, not the full 7 units. I didn't want to cut the whole curb, basically, to allow that to be a safer area for people to walk through. We would also look towards making sure that we have safety measures in place, that the tenants would understand that this is a pedestrian walkway as well. You can't just pull out or pull in super quick. Safety first on that.
Yeah, well, we've heard that you could do 5 dwelling units as a matter of right. Why 7? Why do you need 7?
So I'm actually planning to move into one of the units myself. I want to start a family, and part of it is allowing for more units would allow me to be more safe in terms of the investment being made here, and provide for my family better.
You would like to live there to keep an eye on things? What do you?
So I would like to live here and continuously invest in the Baltimore community for years to come, build more of these buildings, and continue getting better at it. And definitely, this won't be the last time you guys see me here. I plan to do a lot of things in Baltimore, and I'm really excited about it if possible.
Could you live in one of 5 units as opposed to one of 7?
I could do that. I think from economic standpoint, it would be a bit more difficult for the project to make as much sense. So that's kind of what would be, I would say towards that. I also think in general, when you do add more people to an area, it actually does increase the safety. There is less likelihood of people trying to do bad in that area. There's actually talks of like a Whole Foods and Wegmans potentially moving into that area. So, and part of their intrigue is the new developments that have been going on with the Topgolf, with the concert venue, that shopping center over there as well. So I'm looking to make a sound investment as well as have a safe place for family to live.
Okay. So could you build a multifamily dwelling that fits within the setbacks and provides the required parking?
So you mean seven parking to 7 units?
Well, your number is 7. I'm asking, either if it was reduced to 5, could you build it and fit within the required setbacks?
So
And the reason I'm asking that, because it goes to practical difficulty, which is one of the conditions and one of the elements that we have to make a determination about.
Yes, sir. So I think the setbacks, for instance, you mean like the fence setbacks and whatnot. The one thing that I'll say will make this practically difficult is this actually has a field directly behind it. So the fence wouldn't really serve the same purpose it would serve for other homes in the area. Whereas some homes have the fence, but there's a street behind it where they could pull into their driveway. This would just be a fence with grass behind it. So that part, I think, is a little bit fundamentally different than the other houses on that street.
But it doesn't mean you can't build it. It might. So how is that a practical difficulty?
I think I would say that it's a practical difficulty in the sense that we're building a fence, but it's not really fencing anything. And I also look at it like, at the end of the day, we're gonna have tenants there that would want to be able to freely walk over to the neighboring area. And I think that would provide them that opportunity. We'd allow for pets, and we would potentially, maybe invest in that area as well with the church to try to make that a playground or a dog park area where people could go as well.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Go, absolutely.
This is an unimproved lot that appears that hasn't been approved ever. I think that's what the planning memo said. What's stopping you from just building a smaller building?
I think you could do that. My goal with buying the lot was to continuously invest in Baltimore. I wanted to build a 7-unit building, and I wanted to improve the area and overall make it better. So I'm willing to work with folks to try and do that and be in agreement with them. I am always trying to be better and do better. So I want to improve things. I want to make things better. I want to create something that's amazing.
Do you believe that a building that's 5 units instead of 7 and just a bit smaller in the massing can also be an improvement to the community?
I think it could be. I think that wouldn't fit the vision, the dream. I would say, do you all think it's impossible to do 7, to consider 7? There is a 7-unit building literally right down the street, a stone throws away. I think there's a lot of space there. There is a lot of parking in the area. And I would even add to the parking if I could.
Yeah. Well, we're just like you. We're sort of stuck with the zoning code, which requires setbacks for a side yard, for a rear yard, and also requirements for density. So, as much as we would like to see 7 there, unless you can give us reasons why it's it's impossible for you to build 5 units that's fit within those guidelines, then we have to follow the zoning code as is.
Okay, so I would say that's different from my previous build. I think in that one, right down the street, it was years ago when I spoke to you all last. It was back during the pandemic, and that was 3, I think it was allowed for, and there was 5 that we were able to achieve there. And similarly, I was looking to achieve the same type of goal here. I think
What is driving, what is,
Was that an unimproved lot? Was it an already built structure?
it was unimproved.
Okay.
Same thing. I only do ground up. I don't do renovations.
so could you distill for me the desire, what's driving the desire between 5 units, which you could have as a right, and 7?
So for it to make economic feasible sense,
With a little pencil at 5?
it wouldn't make as much economic sense to do it. I may be better off just selling the land and doing something like that. So that's where it wouldn't make as much fundamental sense to do that type of building.
You wouldn't get as good a return on 5 as you would on 7.
I think I might lose money even, so it might not even be a logical thing to do.
Okay. All right, anything else you want to add?
I'd say that, I'm really trying to be the best for the city of Baltimore, help out in any way that I can. I'm actively in the community and am willing to do whatever I can to make the city better, a safer place to be, and get people to move to the city. So my goal is really to help and help in any way that I can. I am hopeful that this is just the start of many great things to come. And I really hope that you all can give me the opportunity to really help this city and transform it.
Did you hear any opposition when you went to the community association meeting?
So at the community association meeting, there was more so questions. People were very excited about the build. I also got people that offered to write me letters of support for the build itself. This is the first time I've seen of the opposition, so I was a little surprised by it, just by the sense that I had given out letters and tried to do everything I can to prevent this type of situation. So there wasn't really negative opposition that I had heard for this build.
Okay. You good?
Yeah, I'm in good shape.
Okay. Sir, let's hear from you.
Yeah, so.
You can have a seat if you like.
Okay. So mainly the community that I've talked to, including Sabrina and some of the other business owners, would be parking during business hours, so not just parking overnight for the renters or whoever's going to be there. We would also be concerned about safety. I've talked to several people in the community that adding more people is not always a great thing. We're not vetting them or anything like that. If
Well,
he does want to...
I'm sorry, you said you're not vetting those individuals?
Yeah.
Do you ever get the chance to do that before allowing somebody to move into a neighborhood?
But not us, but the business.
Okay.
And if he's trying to start a business, you would be wanting to vet them so that they can actually pay for, he's proposing 7 units instead of 5, which would be allowable. If he wants to live in a unit, he already has one down the block from it that I think you said you had one person ready to lease out, and that's 5 units. Live in one of those, make that from a 7 to a 5 might help out. I don't know.
I have one quick question. Are you aware of any residents in Pigtown that don't own a car, that use public transportation?
Not that I know of.
Nobody in Pigtown uses public transportation.
Nobody that is in my community group chat that live on our street. Not that I know of.
Okay.
Let's give this a try again. What is your opposition?
Safety and parking.
Safety meaning what?
We don't know who's going to be living there.
Well,
If it's 7 units on a one lot thing, we're cramming a lot of people into one spot.
Well, you wouldn't know who's living in 5 units if you did it, which you could do as of right,
Yeah,
correct?
we don't know that.
So aren't you in the same situation?
Yeah, but with more people comes increased risk.
So the issue becomes the density,
Yes.
as opposed to we don't know who it is and what they're like.
Yes.
and what was the issue with the parking again?
He has 4 parking spots for 7 apartments. Where are the other 3 coming from? We already have a full street. That's where the parking would be is a one-way street with no parking on it. The other unit that he has is on a one-way street with street parking with 5 units. Why is it 5 parking spots for 5 units and then 4 for 7? 1 block away from each other. So if we're adding 12 units in a 1 block radius, how is parking going to happen?
I just wanted to make sure that we gotta stick to the application in front of us. I know he mentioned that he has the other property with 5, but we just gotta stick
I'm
to
just
the,
making
to
comparison.
to what he has.
Yeah, I'm just making comparison between the 2. Why does one have 5 and 5 and one has 4 and 7?
Did you bring any of these issues up at the community association meeting?
I was not able to attend. I was out of state.
She's not sworn in, please.
Would you like to swear in?
I can swear in?
Well, that's why I asked you up front. It's helpful if you might testify to get sworn in at the beginning, but if you'd like to testify, we can get you sworn.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give, the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Thank you. Can you state and then spell your full name?
Sabrina Kirchner.
Spell Kirshner.
Kirchner.
Hear from you, ma'am.
So I was at the meeting and he told us that he would do agreement with the church. And at that meeting, I told him that the church would not agree with him because we tried. I live in the same side of the street that he's talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
And we have, like he said, he doesn't have entrance from the back because it's a grass that the church owns, that grass. Okay. We have that one space, but it's alleyway. We cannot park on that space, so it's not like, oh, we can just get in from the church because the parking lot of the church cannot be used any moment because it belongs to the church, and the church don't rent out that parking lot. So no one show up, no one came because everyone is under the impression that he gonna do agreement with the church to have parking. But at the day I knew and I asked him and I even told him good luck with the church because the church doesn't do agreements with anyone. Like we are trying for now 5 years to have the parking spot that's in front of in the back of our house, so we can park in our garage.
Yes, ma'am.
And the church doesn't let us pay them to have that parking lot, rent that parking lot.
I see. Thank you for that information. Have you approached the church about?
Yes, so the agreement with the church was not on the parking. The agreement was on trash. So that's the part that I think is misunderstood there. And they don't have a problem with us. We would, of course, I would finance some of the trash removal cost, but it wasn't for the parking itself. The other part I would mention is the parking is plainly available, and due to the unique design, as we kind of covered before, it's not easy to cut the whole curb to provide those 7 spots. So that was part of that request there. So I just think it's a misunderstanding. I'd be honestly willing to work with you guys in the future and just discuss your concerns, make sure you're all on the same page. I mean, I want you guys to know I'm the good guy, man. I'm really gonna be the guy that helps you guys in the long run of these things. So us being opposing each other like this, it's not beneficial to either of us.
Do you want to talk to the community about what it is, how willing you are to work with them on some of these issues?
I think I've really expressed that. I gave my number out, gave my email out. I sent out letters to all the neighbors. You can even, I have even the Stordahl building that's right directly next to it wrote me a letter of support for the build. Another neighbor wrote me a letter of support for the build. It's overall been very positive, everything that I've heard. Even this, I feel as if these are just misunderstandings that we could definitely discuss, work through, and make sure we're on the right foot, same page. I think you all will be definitely happy when it's all said and done if we're able to achieve this.
So you're proposing to sit down with the another sit down with the neighborhood?
I think, I mean, I would just talk with them. We could work through things. I don't want to have another one. I mean, I think we did that. So the thing is, if I do another one, there might be somebody that wasn't in town that day, and then you're in the same boat again. So it's
You've
like,
been there and done that.
yeah.
Okay.
She was there, though.
Can I say something?
You may.
Our problem, at least from the people that are, because Ian is on the other side, we are on this side, the same side as he is. It's more if it's 5, will be less parking spots on the street, like less taking parking spots, because no one in our street would use transportation. It's hard because you have to walk to a lot to get any bus, anything. So almost everyone has a car. We have one. Almost all the houses has 1 or 2 cars. So will be 7 units. So it's 4 parking space. But imagine if 2 person live in each house, 2 person and they decide to have 2 cars. That's the concern of most of people on our street is that, because we'll be like getting up and up on cars in the street, what is already full.
They could also decide not to have a car.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I try. I walk here.
And I just want to point out.
You said you walked, see?
No, yeah, no, I walk. I try to walk, but it's like if you need to go to grocery, you need a car. You're like, it.
But in 20, there's like, you can get your groceries delivered. So everybody doesn't always drive. So I know the presumption is that people will drive.
Grocery delivery service.
But some people do. A lot of renters do.
I think so. Honestly, it's 2023. And I'll say there is a public bus station right down the street next to the Dollar General. There is the stadium light rail that's right there. And I know plenty of people on my street that actually use that on a daily basis. So I don't think the presumption and assumption that there is no buddy that uses public transportation in the area is factually accurate.
Never
You
seen anybody.
live in the neighborhood?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let me ask Mr. French, I have a question for you. I may have missed it.
That's all right.
Did planning have a view on the uniqueness of this particular lot, if at all?
We did not make a formal statement on that. As I said, it's an unusual lot because of the fact that it apparently is not being developed for over 125 years, according to records we were able to locate. I would add one other comment, and that is coming back to the issue about the site plan review. And that is one of the fundamental requirements of a multifamily dwelling is to have proper trash and garbage removal. It is a bit of a concern to hear that the trash and garbage removal might come to rely upon use of a dumpster on another property that's not owned by the applicant. That's going to involve a very long-term legal agreement in order to have the trash and garbage removed off an adjacent property. And the aerial photograph appears to show that the church's dumpster is fairly close, but on the other side of the fence that they have referred to. And These are the sorts of details that the Site Plan Review Committee would want to hear more about in order to be able to recommend approval of the development. Thanks.
I don't think this thing's cooked.
Are you sure you don't want to submit another site plan or update it to see how you could improve, I don't know, address even that concern?
Okay, I'm not against that. I guess I'd ask you all if I needed to do that and get up
You
here
don't need to do
again.
anything. It's, we're suggesting and, you know, it's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to do is be successful at the build. And if this gives me a better chance to be successful towards making that happen, I mean, there's no reason why I would oppose that.
You want to postpone it?
I guess I would ask you if I needed to get another zoning hearing scheduled while we could work on that type of thing, how long do you all think? Would it be a couple months, or what do you think?
I don't know.
Well,
We do have some things that are scheduled.
we have hearings on the 29th, we have hearings on the 5th, the 19th is booked, and then we have 2 hearings in October. We might have 3 hearings in October. I'm not sure what needs to happen before it gets rescheduled in terms of like conversations with the site plan review committee or anybody else or planning to address some of the issues. So that will factor into it. But yeah, I mean, we can reschedule for basically any of those dates except for the 19th of
Okay.
September.
So if we could do the first one in October, I'd be open-minded to that. And I could work with you just to better understand what we could do to add some more details to the drawings to provide you all what you need. And if you guys could tell me, I don't know, if you could tell me, hey, 7 is not possible, then I can just go ahead and sell the property, we could forget about it.
Well, that would require us to deliberate and make a determination on your application.
Okay.
Probably like a little bit more information, certainly, and planning weighing in on the additional information they can get from you
Okay.
before we get to that point, so.
I think also, and if you went through this process several years ago, I'm sure it is quite different from the process now. We've changed a lot of things about how we operate to kind of better follow the code. And so what the variance standard really is these are limits, you know, front yard, rear yard, side yard. And you can get an exception through the variance standard, but you have to show us some reason why your property is unique and that you can't do a project within those limits, basically, or it would be very difficult for you to do that. So that's the uniqueness standard and then the practical difficulty standard, and they're kind of connected to each other. So there are several variances here, and we need to hear about why the property is unique and why that uniqueness creates a practical difficulty for you in developing this lot. And it may be the case that this lot has been undeveloped for 125 years because there are uniquenesses here that make it difficult to develop. We just need a little bit more of that information and the connection there between that uniqueness and the practical difficulty so that the board can approve the variances. So so that's what we need.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Ms. Witt, and that requires a bit more than, with all due respect, what your dream is and how you want it to be and what you would like to see, albeit it may be great for, you know, beautiful, aesthetically pleasing, you know, building, but we've got to adhere to these standards, and we need to be able to make factual findings. So it's more than you want to invest good thing, and I applaud that and appreciate what you've done in the community thus far. But we're going to need to be able to answer these particular, or speak to these elements of the variance standard for each of these variances that you need.
So could I ask this? If I just say we do 5 units, I get 4 parking, could we just get that approved? Is that possible? Honestly, and then we could just get out of here. I don't have to. We don't fight about anything. They get their 5 units. We're all happy.
Well, if
side
you're
yard
building to the
variances.
whole lot, if you're building to the lot, you've got variances that you've got to address. So
And it would be 5 parking spaces too, because you need one for every, right?
every
One for
dwelling
every
unit.
dwelling,
So-
so If you're gonna have 5 dwelling units, you would need 5 spaces, and then, yeah, you need to take the setbacks into account as well.
So you need a 1 parking variance for that, which is less than 3.
Yeah, so
which is
it's
like-
less, and I think, we've kind of discussed the uniqueness of the property. It hasn't been developed for 125 years. I'm sure there is a reason why.
We've kind of discussed it, but I think Ms. Witt's points were very telling.
A little
We need more than that. That it
Little
hasn't,
more.
that it's been undeveloped for 125 years. I know we're in 2023, but in applying the code, you got to tell us. It's not for us to identify for you what's unique about it that, would basically engender or entitle you or make it more appropriate to get variances. We got to hear that information from you.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like, for the parking, for
But
instance.
let me also stop you. If we're talking about a different application and accommodations that you want to make, it'd be better for you to make a new record with a new site plan and all those things. The thing that's difficult for us is to modify on the fly what your application actually is, because we're only frankly able to make a determination on what's in front of us, which is a request for 7 dwelling units with the dimensions that you mentioned. So if you're going to change it,
Okay.
we'd recommend that
So-
you change it and then come to us with what those dimensions are.
That could work. So, I mean, we'll do that. We'll go through the process. We can reschedule. Just so I'm clear on the things that the planning kind of needs to know.
You may not be. Talk to planning. It's not helpful to discuss it in front of us. Okay? If you're going to get if you want the postponement, we'll give it to you. I'm not going to sit here and say, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. Have a discussion with planning. They're more than able and more than willing to walk through with you the additional information that you need so you can make this process a bit smoother. All I need to know is whether or not you're going to take advantage of a postponement right now.
What would you recommend?
Nope, not doing that. It's not my application.
All right, let's take advantage of it then, and we can reconvene later. And you guys don't need to show up next time, man. Like, why?
All right. This matter's going to be postponed. Take it up with Ms. Witt's office as when you're ready to come back.
2 people aren't going to kill you, man.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
All right.
How did he get the other goat?
Good
Oh, the
to
other
know.
one, he didn't need to go past site plan. Yeah. Because it was automatic, right? Right. What he didn't pay to realize is they may have seen it.
Okay, case number 2023-135. Actually, can we go off the record for 3 minutes?
We are
Just-
off the record at 2:23.
Just hold that for a couple minutes. Looks like I can't get through that plastic. Yeah, yeah.
Well, that was a gigantic waste of time.
This is your good one? This is your good personality? Holy moly. Oh. Is anything good happening with the neighbors? Just bad stuff.
Okay,
All right, we're going to go.
Market at 232.
thank you. Calling case number 2023-135, 722 Cater Avenue. Eric Bernard?
Steve Bolton?
Okay, Mr. Bolton, welcome. This is a request to construct a one-story detached single-family dwelling requiring rear and front yard variances, correct?
Correct.
All righty. Let's get the parties sworn.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give and statements that you make will be truthful, the truth?
I do.
And you are Mr. Stephen Bolton, correct?
Yeah,
Surname
correct.
with B,
PH.
P-H, D-O-L-T-O-N.
Correct.
And sir, if you're going to be speaking, can you state your?
Yeah, I may be Scott Dallas, D-A-L-L-A-S.
All right, welcome, gentlemen. I'll hear from staff and planning.
The request is to construct a one-story detached, single-family dwelling requiring rear and, sorry, that's not right, corner side yard and interior side yard variances. You might have to tell us what the variances are. One of them is 15 feet is required, 5 feet is proposed to be a 10-foot variance, and the other one is 10 feet is required, 5 feet is proposed to be a 5-foot variance. In terms of uniqueness of the lot, it does seem, if you take a look at the aerial or the plat map, you can see that almost all the surrounding properties are semi-detached duplexes or row houses. So the lot width is fairly narrow and you can't build a row house by itself, certainly, or a semi-detached dwelling on the site. And then the practical difficulty that was presented to us was that because this is a request from Habitat for Humanity and they're using some grant funds, so they're required to provide visitable access, which means that it can be visited by people who have trouble with steps or who are have mobility issues. So it has to be one story, which means it needs to have a slightly larger footprint compared to other nearby houses that are two-story. So that kind of was in the application and addressed some of the variance standards. I'll turn it over to Mr. French.
Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that this property was once improved also by a dwelling, which was abandoned and later raised over 15 years ago by the city of Baltimore, which has since conveyed the lot to its current owner. The department noted that the proposed structure dimensions would result in lot coverage of approximately 35.3%. The zoning limit in this particular zoning district, R7, is 35% for a detached dwelling. Therefore, ironically, there is a 1% or 14 square feet variance of the proposed for the proposed building required for lot coverage. With regard to yards, planning has had a discussion with the applicant about reorienting the property from Cater Avenue to Wilsby Avenue, so that Wilsby would become the new front of the building. And in that case, the side yard setback requirements would no longer be needed to be varied. However, a minimum front yard setback of 20 feet is required, and the proposed building would be 5 feet from the front on Wilsby. The minimum rear yard of 25 feet would be required once the orientation is changed. And again, the rear yard would only be 5 feet. So the variances are somewhat different, but they are still variances that are required for setbacks. The property is undergoing design review at the present time, and it's important for the applicant to realize that a curb cut is going to be needed to be approved by the Department of Transportation on Wilsby Avenue. We also have discussed that with the applicant. The Department of Planning recommends that approval of this application be subject to the condition that all improvements in landscaping are completed or installed in accordance with plans approved by the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. So, Mr. Bolton, let me just ask you, given the suggestions about reorienting the property, is that the intent of the applicant to reorient it the way planning has described?
Yes. The reasoning is not just for visitable, but we have a lot of requests for ADA, full ADA.
Yes, sir.
And with Habitat, the vast majority of the work we've done in the city has been remodeling two-story row houses, which don't lend themselves well to ADA, but we get the request. So in this case, we thought this is an opportunity for us to create an ADA opportunity for a family. As I think many of you know, Habitat works with low and very low-income families who can't afford home ownership otherwise, and this is one of the opportunities to do that to someone who is not only low-income but also disabled.
Okay.
So, and the reason for the reorientation is to be able to get the curb cut and parking so they can then wheelchair into the home.
Okay. Ms. Witt described some features of the property in the lot, that it's a fairly narrow lot, okay, which so you're unable to get a semi-detached, semi-detached property on, you can't build that. You need one story.
Right.
Let's see here. And so, tell me about, you're utilizing government grant funds, correct?
Correct.
And how does that restrict you in some way?
Any new construction using grant money, whether it's federal, state, or local, must be visitable minimal.
Okay. And when you say visitable, what does that mean?
Being able to get a wheelchair in and out of the house, yeah.
Okay.
And the use of a restroom, excuse me, and the use of a restroom.
And would it be fair to say that given those requirements and/or limitations or restrictions, you're required to have, and the narrowness of the lot, a slightly larger footprint compared to other houses nearby that would?
I'm sorry.
You're required to have a slightly larger footprint on that
Yeah.
one level living?
And when we designed the house,
Yes, sir.
we obviously designed each of the rooms to be as small as possible. Habitat's model is simple, decent, and affordable, to keep it as small as possible. But it was also to make sure that the wheelchair could spin in any room in the house. So the bathrooms and the bedrooms are all just enough room. So I don't know that we could make it any narrower.
Okay.
And still make it accessible.
Got it. And in order to meet the needs of a habitable or visitable, property, is it your conclusion that there is no way to make the property visitable and also satisfy the existing restrictions in the code?
But as I mentioned, if to have more than one bedroom in the house and be able to spin a wheelchair next to a bed and into closets and into bathrooms, I don't think we could make it any smaller. I just don't know how we would do that. And we worked hard on that, trying to make it as tight as we possibly could.
All right. Any questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
I'll just thank you for consideration, and our hope is to, as Habitat's model is to offer housing for all lower income families, whether they're able or disabled.
Okay. Thank you so much. Based on the presentation here for this application, it appears to me that the conditions on what the application is based is based, there's uniqueness of the property. The lot in and of itself is narrower than, other lots in the area, more narrow than other lots in the area. And those other properties are typically semi-detached, and it's impossible to build a semi-detached property on this particular lot, coupled with needing the larger footprint because of the one-level living. I believe it makes it a unique property for purposes of the code. I would just cross-reference the commentary from Ms. Witt in her report, the staff. There would be a practical difficulty in complying with the code because the house has to be the size that it needs to be in order to accommodate the wheelchair access, to navigate. That practical difficulty or the unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty is caused by the code, not by what the applicant is seeking to do. The variances requested are not exclusively based on a desire to increase the value or income potential. Sort of quite the contrary. It's to enable an affordable property to be built here. The The variances, in my view, based on the record, would not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity or otherwise substantially diminish or impair property values in the neighborhood. And it would appear to be, the variance would appear to be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the code. And the variance is not otherwise detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. So I'm a yes for this particular.
I'm also yes.
Very well, thank you. And finally, case number 2023-138, 1533 Bolton Street. Michael Weststraight and company, come on up.
I have additional documentation, but I'm not sure if that was provided already.
Okay, this is a request to construct a new garage in the rear, 21 feet by 29 feet, and a fence that will exceed 6 feet in height, requiring rear yard and height variances, correct?
That's correct.
All right, let's get the parties witness sworn.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give in the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. So you're Mr. Westgate? correct?
Weststraight.
Westgate, sorry.
Yes.
I do that right here. If you're going to be testifying, state and spell your full name.
Matthew Grant, Matthew Grant.
Okay, I'll hear from staff and planning.
Okay, 4 variances are actually requested or required here for this project. Accessory structure height, so it's a garage in the rear, it's an accessory structure, 15 feet is allowed, 22 feet is proposed, it'd be a 7-foot variance requested. Corner side yard setback, 15 feet is required, 0 is proposed to be a 15-foot variance. Detached garage area, 660 square feet is allowed, and the proposed garage is 1,005 square feet proposed, so it'd be a 345 square foot variance. And then the brick exterior wall along the interior side and corner side of the property, because of the slope of the property, it goes up to 7 feet tall instead of 6 is the maximum, at least on the interior side. So there would be a variance for the brick wall as well. That's it from me.
Planning Department, excuse me, Planning Department reviewed this application, notes this property is in the Madison Park South Urban Renewal Plan area. The Urban Renewal Plan does not prohibit the proposed use made in this application. This property is also in the Bolton Hill District, which is a locally and nationally designated city historic district. The applicant obtained approval from the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation for the proposed improvements of the property in May of 2023. Therefore, the department recommends that approval of the application be subject to the condition that all improvements are constructed or installed in accordance with the authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. So again, so we're here on variance request for variances. And so that, of course, entails a determination of uniqueness of the property. And just reading through the application, it would appear that the uniqueness presented in the application really addresses the wall as to why the variances are needed for the wall, but maybe not necessarily for the garage structure. So how is the uniqueness of the property tied to what it is you want to do with the garage?
Sure. So a part of the process is that we're in a very dense urban environment, so it is very common and necessary that we build all the way to the lot lines of the property. It's very regular in the neighborhood, and it's a small site, and that would be required. We're also located directly, we're on a corner lot on a very busy street. The front of the house faces Bolton Street, the side faces McMeckton, and the back Jenkins Alley. The back of the house abuts a very tall apartment building, one of the tallest in the neighborhood. It's at least 5 stories tall, maybe 6. And it also has a two-story story and a half parking garage behind our house, directly adjacent to our property. That garage has parking on lower level and on the upper level. So the scale of the adjacent properties is very similar or very different. They're larger. And so the two-story garage is actually complementary to that massing of the adjacent properties. Being in a historic district is very common, and this is something that you'll see in the CHAP report as well, especially on corner properties, for there to be garages or carriage houses in the back of the property. These properties are often 2 stories with storage below for horses or cars, and then sometimes they're used for living spaces above or other uses above. So it's actually in keeping with the historic nature of many of these properties. In that document that's provided, there's many precedent images throughout the neighborhood, even on our own alleyway, of houses on the corner lots with very similar size structure, some of them larger. If there's anything you can add to that.
No, and practically speaking, it is a very busy street in both cars and pedestrians. The only grocery store in the neighborhood's about a block away. We have Micah student traffic, and Mount Royal Elementary School is just down the street. All of that's great. We love being in the urban environment, but our intent is to use the second floor of the carriage house as a home office. And so putting yourself above a lot of that pedestrian traffic, I think, is kind of one of the incentives of building it and doing a second story to that. We're also making it a multi-generational residence. So my parents will be moving into the lower level living space. And so practically speaking, it would be nice to have an office away from that.
Okay, so there's no combination or variance required or for any office space in this structure?
No, if it's a home office, it doesn't need the board's approval as long as it's just a personal space with a desk and computer in it. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that. As long as there's not like people visiting a lot or home occupation it's included in that.
Okay. Of all the materials that you submitted, which are quite impressive, what is it that is most relevant for us to review, if anything, with regard to this?
Good question. I think that the elevations are telling in the drawing set, as well as the 3D views to show the relationship of the property to the adjacent, both the wall as well as the adjacent parking garage. The scale of the building, although slightly taller than the allowable accessory structure height, is only a few feet taller than the adjacent parking garage. And in relation to the wall, there's an existing wall there that is already 6 feet tall. It's a mix of brick and wood. We are rebuilding it with brick to match the historic fabric. And the topography slopes towards the back alley, and that is why we're looking for that 7-foot variance, because as it gets lower, it's going to be about 7 feet above grade. At the highest point, it's going to be a little bit more than 6 feet above grade. I don't know if I answered your question. But the drawing set, I think, also, well, the elevations in the drawing set are helpful. You're getting the colored renderings are distracting, but the drawing set also has more information.
Okay.
And the drawing set's the separate
Yeah,
black
it's a
and white.
separate black and white set, so I think Mr. Cunningham has it there on his desk.
You open to that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
That might be a little bit more telling of scale.
Okay. Excellent, this is helpful. There.
And as you're looking at the letters, we of course have something from the local chat board, but also we sat down with the adjoining property owner, and we have a letter from them, and they were in support of it, and they really liked it.
Okay.
One thing that they thought might happen, but I can't validate that, is they thought it might actually block some of the sound from that corner coming into all the backyards.
Okay, so it'd be beneficial to them as well.
Yes.
And just a note about the siting of the property, I didn't discuss this previously. Access to the garage will be off the alleyway.
Yes, sir.
There was comment previously when I went through the chap review with the commission of some of these properties have access off the main road.
Yes, sir.
It was decided to be off the alleyway to maintain the existing pedestrian and vehicle traffic patterns. And so we're minimizing, it's safer that way because it is a very busy street. And then the curb cuts will be limited to the alleyway, which doesn't really require a curb cut because it's pretty much flat. And additionally to that, we are providing 2 parking spaces by providing this garage, which helps alleviate some of the busyness as far as the parking in the neighborhood. It's a permit parking area, but it is challenging at times to find parking, especially with bi-weekly street cleanings.
Okay. Is this their application? Street, also slopes.
The president and everybody want a 2-story garage down, straight on down the alley.
Just curious about the concern.
It'd be like a game room.
Oh, yeah,
The garage, there's an existing garage there presently, right?
There is not.
There's not.
There's not.
I don't understand what I'm looking at.
The other, there's images of the adjacent properties
That's all right.
in that set that show all the other corners have garages, and the houses directly across from Metchin actually fill the entire lot with garages. We are still maintaining a yard in our property. And then, as mentioned before, behind our house is the 1.5-story parking garage with parking on top.
Okay. Any questions for the applicants? No. Okay. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
This is more of a summary in terms of the applicability of the variance requirements. So, are the conditions on which the application is based unique to the property, for which the variance or variances are sought? I'm going to say yes. On that note, I believe it is unique. The conditions of the property, based on the record, that the property is unique. Also find that any unnecessary hardship, practical difficulty is made, is occasioned by the conditions of the property and not anything intentional that the applicant is seeking to do. So it's caused by the code as opposed to caused by the applicant. I don't believe the purpose of the variance is requested or exclusively based on a desire to increase the value of the income potential of the property. Because you're living there, right? And adding your parents there.
Yeah.
Would not appear that the variances are injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property. Appears that you're going to be adding a benefit to other property owners that are situated there, and otherwise the variances appear to be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the code, and also not a detriment or danger to the public health, safety, and welfare. And I think you've also taken measures to make it even more safe, particularly with regard to traffic patterns and whatnot. So I'm a yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Good luck with the painters.
Good luck.
Thank you so
I
much.
look forward to the housewarming, because this looks really cool.
Yes, beautiful.
This is really neat. All right.
All right, I think we're all done for the day.
Boss?
Yeah, that's nice. Let's make a nice spot.
Are we off the record?